The text message glowed on my phone screen like a warning flare. "Watch your back tomorrow. They don't play fair." I stared at it, my stomach twisting into knots, as the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drifted up from our dining room below. The annual pre-scholarship dinner was in full swing, and I, Yara, was hiding in my bedroom instead of playing my part in our picture-perfect family gathering. "Yara, get down here this instant!" My mother's voice carried that familiar edge of barely contained irritation. I smoothed my dress and took one last look in the mirror. Deep breath, game face on. The scholarship interview tomorrow was my ticket out, and I couldn't let anyone see how desperately I wanted it. The dining room fell silent as I descended the stairs. Aunt Christine's perfectly manicured hand paused mid-gesture, her wine glass catching the light. My cousin Morgan sat beside her, wearing that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "There's our other little scholar." Aunt Christine's voice dripped honey. "We were just discussing tomorrow's interviews. Morgan's been preparing for months, haven't you, sweetheart?" Morgan nodded, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "I have memorized every past recipient's profile. Did you know they've never chosen anyone who wasn't involved in at least 3 leadership positions?" The jab wasn't subtle. I'd spent my high school years studying while Morgan collected club presidencies like trophy badges. "Yara's taken a different approach," my mother chimed in, her tone making it clear which approach she preferred. "Though I do worry about her tendency to isolate herself. The committee looks for well-rounded candidates." I speared a piece of asparagus with more force than necessary. "I maintain a 4.0 GPA while working part-time at the library. I'd say that's pretty well-rounded." "Of course, dear," Aunt Christine smiled. "But there's more to life than books. Morgan, tell everyone about your volunteer work at the Children's Hospital." As Morgan launched into her perfectly rehearsed speech, I noticed my phone buzzing. A text from my cousin Destiny. "Hang in there. Remember what we talked about." Destiny was the only one who'd escaped this gilded cage. She'd moved across the country 2 years ago, cutting ties with most of the family. Now I understood why. "Speaking of the scholarship," Aunt Christine's voice cut through my thoughts. "I ran into Dean Oliver at the country club last week. Such a concerned man. We had quite an illuminating conversation about the candidates." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The way she emphasized illuminating made my skin crawl. "Oh?" I kept my voice steady. "What kind of conversation?" "Just discussing the importance of emotional stability in academic pressure cookers like Crestwood." She shared a look with my mother that made my blood run cold. "We wouldn't want anyone cracking under the strain, would we?" Morgan's smile widened slightly. My mother suddenly became very interested in her wine glass. "I handle pressure just fine," I said quietly. "Of course you do, sweetie." Aunt Christine reached across the table to pat my hand. "But after that incident last year," "There was no incident." My voice came out sharper than intended. "I took a mental health day, one day, because I had the flu." "The school counsellor seemed quite concerned," my mother murmured. "And as your mother, I feel obligated to ensure any scholarship committee has a complete picture of—" "Who wants dessert?" Morgan interrupted brightly. "Mom made her famous tiramisu." As everyone shifted focus to the dessert, I excused myself to use the bathroom. In the hallway, I overheard whispered fragments from the kitchen where Aunt Christine and my mother were gathering dessert plates. "Committee needs to understand. For her own good, really. Morgan's worked so hard. Better suited." I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding. The anonymous text message suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't just supporting Morgan. They were actively working to sabotage me. Back in the dining room, Morgan caught my eye and smiled. Not her usual practiced smile, but something darker, more satisfied. She knew. She'd always known. I pulled out my phone under the table and typed a quick response to Destiny. "You were right. They're planning something for tomorrow." Her reply came instantly. "Document everything. Trust no one. And Yara, make them regret underestimating you." I looked around the table at my family's smiling faces, all raising their glasses in yet another toast to Morgan's bright future. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. Game on. Something was wrong. I felt it the moment I walked into the interview room. The committee members' expressions were too rigid, their smiles too practiced, like they'd already made up their minds. "Please, take a seat, Yara." Dr. Martinez gestured to the chair in front of their long table. 4 pairs of eyes watched me carefully, searching for something. "Thank you for having me," I said, smoothing my skirt as I sat. Through the glass wall behind them, I caught a glimpse of Morgan in the waiting area, typing furiously on her phone. "We've reviewed your application thoroughly," Dr. Martinez began, "and we have some concerns we'd like to address." My heart stuttered. "Concerns? Your academic record is impressive," another committee member, Dr. Walsh, interjected, "but we've received some troubling information about your emotional stability." The room tilted slightly. I gripped the arms of my chair, remembering Destiny's words, "Document everything." "I wasn't aware there were concerns about my stability," I said carefully. "Could you elaborate?" Dr. Martinez shuffled some papers. "We understand you had a breakdown last year that required intervention from the school counselor." "That's not accurate," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I had the flu and took 1 sick day. The counselor checked in because it was during finals week, but I still maintained my 4.0 GPA. Your mother seems quite worried about your ability to handle stress," Dr. Walsh pressed. "She mentioned isolation tendencies, anxiety issues." The pieces clicked into place. Every missed family dinner because I was studying. Every therapy session I'd attended to learn stress management techniques. They'd twisted it all into something sinister. "I chose to prioritize my academics," I said. "That meant missing some social events. As for therapy, I believe in mental health maintenance. Many successful people do." A new voice cut through the tension. "Interesting perspective." I turned to see an older man standing in the doorway. His presence seemed to shift the energy in the room. "Dean Oliver," he introduced himself, taking a seat at the end of the table. "Please continue." I straightened my spine. "I've worked part-time at the library since freshman year, while maintaining top grades. I've published 2 research papers in student journals. I may not lead 5 clubs, but I've earned every achievement through hard work and focus." "And the anxiety issues your aunt mentioned?" Dr. Walsh pressed. "My aunt," I said carefully, "has her own perspectives on success. I prefer to let my results speak for themselves." Dean Oliver leaned forward. "Tell me about your research papers." For the next 20 minutes, we discussed my work on environmental impact studies and educational inequality. The other committee members grew quieter as Dean Oliver asked increasingly specific questions. "Impressive grasp of statistical analysis," he commented. "Most high school students wouldn't attempt such complex methodology." "Most students have more free time for extracurriculars," I replied. I had to make my limited time count. As the interview wrapped up, I caught Dean Oliver studying me with an unreadable expression. Outside, I heard Morgan's laugh, followed by Aunt Christine's voice. "Thank you for your time," I said, standing. "I hope you'll judge me on my own merits." In the hallway, Morgan brushed past me into the interview room. "Good luck," she smirked. "Though I heard they're looking for someone more stable." I waited until she disappeared before letting my hands shake. Pulling out my phone, I found 3 texts from my mother. "Hope you're being appropriate. Remember to smile. Christine says Morgan's interview went perfectly." A memory flashed. Me at 14, winning the state science fair. Instead of congratulations, my mother had said, "It's not healthy to spend so much time alone with your experiments." Another, 16, getting a perfect SAT score. Aunt Christine's response, "But did you hear Morgan made cheer captain?" I was so lost in thought, I almost missed it. Aunt Christine's voice floating from around the corner, "It's done." Morgan's reply, "Perfect, they totally bought it." I pressed myself against the wall, phone recording. "The therapy angle was inspired, Mum. Did you see their faces when you mentioned possible depression?" Dean Oliver seemed interested in her research. Christine said, "But don't worry, no one wants to risk a scholarship on someone who might crack under pressure." Their voices faded as they walked away. I stopped the recording, hands steady now. Destiny was right. Document everything. My phone buzzed. "Ms. Reyes, please see me in my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Dean Oliver." I stared at the message, heart pounding. He'd seen something during that interview, The question was, what? Looking back toward the interview room, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass. I didn't see the unstable, isolated girl they'd described. I saw someone they'd severely underestimated. And that was their first mistake. I spent the night gathering evidence. Every condescending text, every concerned email my mother and aunt had sent to teachers over the years. My hands shook as I forwarded them to a secure email account Destiny had helped me create. "You don't look like you've slept," Destiny said during our morning video call. She was the only one who knew I was meeting Dean Oliver. "Hard to sleep when your family's trying to destroy your future," I replied, attempting to tame my hair into something professional. "Remember what I told you about the receipts?" I nodded, pulling up the folder on my phone. "Everything's dated and backed up, including the recording from yesterday." "Good girl. Now go show them what quiet rage looks like." Dean Oliver's office was smaller than I expected, with walls lined with books instead of the usual academic awards. He gestured for me to sit, while he finished typing something on his computer. "Interesting thing about email records," he said without looking up. "They leave quite a trail." My heart stopped. "Your aunt has been quite persistent in her communications with the committee." He turned his screen toward me. There were dozens of emails from Christine, dating back months. "I had no idea," I said quietly. "No?" He raised an eyebrow. "Then perhaps you can explain why I have similar emails from your mother, your aunt, and 3 different family friends, all coincidentally concerned about your mental state?" I pulled out my phone, hands steady. "Actually, I can explain exactly why." I played the recording from yesterday. Dean Oliver's expression remained neutral as he listened to Christine and Morgan's conversation outside the interview room. "Interesting," he said when it finished, "but it doesn't prove systematic sabotage." "No," I agreed, opening my email. "But these might." I showed him the archived messages. Christine telling my elementary school teacher I was disturbingly antisocial when I preferred reading to recess. My mother emailing my middle school counselor about concerns every time I outperformed Morgan on tests. The steady stream of subtle undermining, all carefully documented. "You've been preparing for this," he observed. "My cousin Destiny warned me. She left the family 2 years ago after they did the same thing to her. She taught me to keep records." A knock interrupted us. A tall guy about my age stuck his head in. Another scholarship candidate I recognized from yesterday. "Sorry, sir, I can come back." "No, Damien, please join us." Dean Oliver waved him in. "I believe you have something to add to this conversation." Damien sat, glancing at me apologetically. "I overheard your aunt and cousin in the parking lot yesterday. They were talking about how they'd taken care of the competition. I recorded it." He played the clip. Christine's voice was unmistakable. "The scholarship's as good as yours, Morgan. No committee would choose someone with a history of mental instability." "That's 3 separate recordings of attempted sabotage," Dean Oliver said, "plus years of documented manipulation." "I'm not here to destroy my family," I said quickly. "I just want a fair chance." "Fair?" Damien scoffed. "They're trying to ruin your life." "No," I corrected him. "They're trying to control it. There's a difference." Dean Oliver studied me for a long moment. "You know, most people would be plotting revenge." "Revenge is reactive," I said. "I prefer to be strategic." A small smile crossed his face. "The scholarship gala is next week. All candidates are required to attend with their families." "I know. Morgan's already planning her acceptance speech." "Is she?" He picked up an envelope from his desk. "Then perhaps you should read this." Inside was an official invitation. My name was listed under honorees. "Sir, the committee votes tomorrow," he said, "but I think you should keep this information to yourself for now. Sometimes the best response to manipulation is simply to let it play out." "While documenting everything," Damien added with a grin. "Precisely." Dean Oliver stood. "Oh, and Yara, wear something memorable to the gala. I have a feeling it's going to be quite an evening." Outside his office, Damien caught up with me. "Hey, I know we're technically competitors, but what they're doing is wrong. If you need another witness..." "Thanks," I said. "But I think Dean Oliver has something bigger planned." My phone buzzed. Morgan had posted on Instagram. 1 week until dreams come true. Chas, crestward bound, Shao blessed. I smiled, thinking of the invitation in my bag. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about letting people dig their own graves while you quietly build your escape route. Destiny texted, "How'd it go?" "Better than expected," I replied. "Think you can make it to the gala next week? Something tells me you won't want to miss it." Her response was immediate. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Time to show them what the unstable ones can do." The committee votes were unanimous, Dean Oliver said, leaning back in his chair. "But before we make the official announcement at the gala, I need to be absolutely certain you understand what you're walking into." I sat across from him, clutching the acceptance letter I wasn't supposed to have yet. "You mean the fallout?" "Your family believes they've successfully sabotaged your chances. They're planning quite the celebration for Morgan." "I know. My mother's already ordered champagne." He raised an eyebrow. "And that doesn't anger you?" "Of course it does," I admitted. "But I learned a long time ago that anger without strategy is just noise." A knock interrupted us. Damien entered, followed by a woman I recognized instantly. Destiny. "Sorry we're late," she said, hugging me tight. "Traffic was horrible." Dean Oliver nodded. "Good. Everyone's here. Let's discuss the gala." "I still don't understand why you wanted me here," Damien said. "Because," Dean Oliver replied, "we need witnesses who aren't emotionally invested. People who can verify everything that's about to unfold." Destiny pulled out her laptop. "I've been doing some digging. Found some interesting emails between Christine and the hospital board where Morgan supposedly volunteered." "Let me guess," I said. "She inflated her hours?" "Try invented them entirely. The program she claimed to lead doesn't exist." Dean Oliver's expression hardened. "And the other candidates she helped eliminate over the years?" 3, Destiny confirmed. "All mysteriously withdrew after sudden concerns were raised about their applications. I have the paper trail." "Which is why," Dean Oliver said, "we're going to handle this carefully. The gala isn't just about announcing a scholarship winner. It's about exposing a pattern." My phone buzzed. Another group text from my mother. "Don't forget to wear the blue dress we picked out, and please try to smile naturally in the photos." "They're planning a photo shoot before the gala," I explained. "Morgan's idea." "Perfect," Destiny smiled. "Let them set their own stage." Dean Oliver handed me a folder. "These are copies of every email your aunt and mother sent to the committee. Notice the timestamps?" I flipped through them. "They started reaching out months before applications were even open?" "Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting." He pulled up an email on his computer. "This is from 3 years ago. Different candidate, same tactics." "The girl who dropped out right before the final decision?" Damien asked. "Yes. She's now at Yale, by the way. Quite successful." Dean Oliver smiled. "She's agreed to send a video statement for the gala." My hands started shaking. "You're going to expose everything." "No," he corrected. "I'm going to let them expose themselves. Your job is simply to stay calm and let the dominoes fall." Destiny squeezed my hand. "Like I told you, you don't need to fight back. Just let them hand it to you." "The gala program has been modified," Dean Oliver continued. "I'll be giving a speech about integrity and family support, during which certain emails will be displayed on the screen behind me. Christine will try to spin it," Destiny warned. "Let her try," Damien said. "The evidence speaks for itself." My phone buzzed again. Morgan this time. "Can't wait to see you at the gala. Hope you're not too disappointed. There's always community college." "Don't respond," Destiny advised, reading over my shoulder. "Let her think she's won." "The hardest part," Dean Oliver said quietly, "will be maintaining your composure when the truth comes out. Can you do that?" I thought about years of subtle cuts wrapped in concern, of achievements diminished and confidence undermined, of Morgan's smirk and Christine's calculated manipulation. "Yes," I said firmly, "I can do that." "Good, because the committee isn't just giving you the scholarship." He handed me another document. "We're also awarding you the President's mentorship package. Full ride, plus a research funding and direct mentorship from faculty." My hands trembled as I read the details. It was more than I'd dared hope for. That's what they were really trying to get for Morgan, Destiny realized. Indeed. Dean Oliver stood. The gala is in 3 days. Until then, absolute discretion is crucial. As we left his office, Damien caught my arm. Hey, need a date for this takedown? Might help sell the totally clueless vibe if you show up with another candidate. I smiled. Actually, that's perfect. My phone lit up with another Instagram notification. Morgan posting photos of her gala dress. The caption read, "Ready to start my Crestwood journey. Some dreams are just meant to be." "Oh, honey," Destiny muttered, reading over my shoulder. "You have no idea what's coming?" I saved the post, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply letting people write their own ending. And this ending was going to be spectacular. Just one more day until my baby gets her dream. Christine's Facebook post popped up on my feed, complete with a professional photo shoot of Morgan in her gala dress. The comment section was flooded with congratulations and heart emojis. "You okay?" Destiny asked, sprawled across my bed while I finished alterations on my own gala dress. Not the blue one my mother had chosen, but a sleek black number that meant business. "I'm fine. Just watching the show." My phone chimed again. This time it was my mother. "Morgan's celebration dinner is tonight. Don't be late and please try to be supportive." "You don't have to go," Destiny said. "Yes, I do. It's their last performance. Might as well enjoy it." The celebration dinner was exactly as expected. Our favourite restaurant, filled with family friends and Morgan holding court at the centre table. My mother had even ordered a custom cake with "Gaheng, congratulations future Crestwood scholar," written in gold icing. "Yara, there you are." Christine air-kissed my cheek. "We were just telling everyone about Morgan's incredible interview." "I'm sure you were," I smiled, taking my seat. Morgan clinked her glass for attention. "I just want to thank everyone for their support, especially my mum and Aunt Mary, who've always pushed me to reach for the stars. Tomorrow night's announcement is just a formality. We already know what's coming." More cheers, more champagne. I caught Damien's eye across the room. He'd come as my +1, playing his part perfectly. "It must be hard," an elderly family friend whispered to me, patting my hand. "But there's always next year." "Actually," I said clearly, "I'm feeling pretty good about my chances." The table went quiet. Christine's smile tightened. "Oh, sweetie," my mother said, "we don't want you getting your hopes up. The committee seemed quite concerned about certain issues." "What issues would those be, Mum?" "Well," she glanced at Christine for support. "Your emotional stability, for one." "Interesting." I pulled out my phone, opening my recording app under the table. "Could you elaborate on those concerns?" "This isn't the time or place," Christine cut in sharply. "We're here to celebrate Morgan's achievement." "But it hasn't been announced yet," Damien pointed out innocently. "Seems premature to celebrate." Morgan's face flushed. "The committee practically told me it was mine." "Right, Mum?" "Of course, sweetheart," Christine raised her glass. "To Morgan, Crestwood's newest rising star." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Actually, I'm not feeling well. Must be all that emotional instability acting up. Damien, would you mind driving me home?" "Yara," my mother hissed, "don't make a scene." "I would never," I smiled. "That's not my style." Outside, Damien burst out laughing. "Did you see their faces when you mentioned your chances? Classic? Did you get it?" He held up his phone. "Every word, including that lovely bit about your emotional stability." My phone buzzed. Destiny sending the final gala preparations. Dean Oliver confirmed everything's set. "You ready for tomorrow?" I thought about Morgan's smug smile, Christine's calculated manipulation, my mother's willing compliance in their scheme. More than ready. Later that night, I sat at my desk writing a letter I'd been composing in my head for years. "Dear Mum, tomorrow everything changes. Not just the scholarship announcement, but how you see me. How everyone sees me. I want you to know I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because sometimes the only way to break a pattern is to expose it to light." A knock interrupted my writing. My mother stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "I brought you some tea," she said. "For your nerves? Tomorrow might be difficult." I looked at her, really looked at her. "Why did you do it, Mum? Why help them tear me down?" She flinched. "I was trying to protect you. The pressure at Crestwood, and you've always been so sensitive." "No," I cut her off. "You were protecting yourself. From Christine, from conflict, from having to stand up for your own daughter." "Yara, it's okay," I said quietly. "Tomorrow will explain everything." After she left, I finished my letter. "I learned strength from your weakness, courage from your fear, and truth from your lies. Tomorrow isn't about winning or losing. It's about finally being seen. And Mum, I hope you're ready for what that really means. Love, your unshakable daughter." I sealed the letter and picked up my phone to post one last thing before the gala. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one you should have been watching all along. Tomorrow changes everything," Morgan commented almost immediately. "Oh, someone's jealous. Don't worry, you can visit me at Crestwood." I smiled, thinking of the honoree invitation hidden in my desk. Let them have their last night of delusion. Tomorrow, reality takes center stage. The Crestwood University ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Morgan held court near the entrance, resplendent in her designer gown, accepting premature congratulations, while Christine beamed beside her. My mother hovered nearby, throwing anxious glances at the door. "Ready for this?" Damien squeezed my hand as we walked in. I'd arrived fashionably late, wearing my black dress like armor. "Born ready." Destiny materialized at my side. Camera ready. "Everything's set. Dean Oliver just confirmed the presentation is locked and loaded." The room hushed as Dean Oliver took the stage. Behind him, a massive screen flickered to life. "Welcome to our annual scholarship gala," he began. "Tonight, we celebrate not just academic excellence, but integrity, resilience, and truth." Christine's smile widened. Morgan straightened her shoulders. "In my years as dean, I've learned that success isn't just about grades or extracurriculars. It's about character, about how we handle pressure, face challenges, and treat others along the way." The screen behind him changed, showing an email. Christine's smile faltered as she recognized her own words. "We must ensure Yara's application is viewed with appropriate concern. Her mental stability has always been questionable." Another email appeared. "Morgan has worked too hard to let an unstable competitor jeopardize her future." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Morgan's face drained of color. "Interesting things. Email trails," Dean Oliver continued. "They tell stories of their own, stories of systematic manipulation, of orchestrated concern, of calculated character assassination." My mother gripped her champagne glass so hard, I thought it might shatter. But perhaps we should hear from someone who experienced this before. The screen switched to a video. A familiar face appeared, the girl who'd withdrawn 3 years ago. "I was told I was unstable, antisocial, a risk. Later I learned these concerns came from one family, targeting anyone who might outshine their daughter. I withdrew under the pressure. But I'm speaking out now because it's happening again." Christine stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. We were simply expressing valid concerns." "Valid concerns?" Dean Oliver raised an eyebrow. "Like Morgan's extensive hospital volunteer work?" The screen displayed another email, this time from the hospital administrator. "We have no record of any such program or volunteer." Morgan's perfectly composed facade cracked. "Mum, or perhaps," Dean Oliver continued, "we should discuss the multiple recordings we have of certain conversations about taking care of the competition." The audio played crystal clear through the ballroom speakers. Christine and Morgan's victory conversation after my interview, their parking lot plotting, every smug assumption of their success. "Stop this immediately," Christine demanded, her voice shrill. "Why?" I finally spoke, stepping forward. "Isn't this what you wanted? Everything exposed, all the truth laid bare." "Yara," my mother pleaded, "don't do this." "I didn't do this," I said clearly. "You did, all of you. Every time you chose manipulation over merit, every time you tried to dim someone else's light to make Morgan shine brighter. Dean Oliver cleared his throat. And now, the announcement you've all been waiting for. This year's full scholarship recipient, chosen unanimously by the committee for their academic excellence, genuine character, and extraordinary resilience in the face of systematic opposition. Morgan grabbed Christine's arm. My mother closed her eyes. Please join me in congratulating Yara. The room erupted. Destiny's camera clicked rapidly, capturing every expression. Christine's outrage, Morgan's shock, my mother's dawning horror. Furthermore, Dean Oliver continued over the chaos, Yara has also been awarded our prestigious President's Mentorship Package, including full research funding and faculty mentorship. I walked to the stage, head high, feeling years of diminishment fall away with each step. This is impossible. Christine's voice cracked. She's unstable. She's the highest-scoring candidate in Crestwood's history, Dean Oliver finished. And living proof that true strength often comes wrapped in quiet determination. I took the microphone, facing my family. You called me unstable because I didn't break under your pressure. Antisocial because I chose study over schemes. But here's what you never understood. I didn't need to tear anyone down to rise up. You did that all on your own. Morgan ran from the room, Christine following close behind. My mother stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Congratulations, Yara, Dean Oliver said, handing me the official acceptance package. I believe this belongs to you. The applause was deafening, but all I could hear was the sound of truth finally breaking free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead and letting karma handle the rest. And karma, as it turned out, had perfect timing. The aftermath was immediate and spectacular. As I stood on stage accepting congratulations from university officials, social media exploded. Destiny had live-streamed the entire revelation, and the video was already going viral. You might want to see this, Damien said, showing me his phone. Morgan's carefully curated Instagram account was being flooded with comments. Can't believe you tried to sabotage your own cousin. So much for hard work pays off. Karma is beautiful to watch. Christine emerged from the ladies' room, dragging a red-faced Morgan behind her. This isn't over, she hissed as they passed the stage. We'll appeal the decision. You'll what? Dean Oliver interrupted smoothly. Release more emails? Make more false claims about volunteer work that doesn't exist? The board will hear about this humiliation, Christine threatened. Oh, they already have. A distinguished woman stepped forward, the board chairwoman herself. We watched the whole thing. Fascinating presentation, Lyle. Though disturbing. Christine's face went pale. Mum, Morgan whispered. Let's just go. Not yet. I descended the stage steps. First, I want to thank you both. They stared at me. Thank you for teaching me that success doesn't require cruelty. That strength doesn't mean destroying others. Every time you tried to break me, you just made me more determined. Morgan's lip trembled. I never meant... Yes, you did. I cut her off gently. We both know you did. Yara! My mother's voice cracked as she approached. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. But you didn't, I said. And that's a lesson too. Destiny appeared with her camera. Smile, everyone. This is going in my documentary about academic sabotage and family dynamics. Christine grabbed Morgan's arm. We're leaving. This family is dead to us. No. Morgan suddenly pulled away. I'm done letting you fight my battles. The room went silent as Morgan turned to face me. I knew what they were doing was wrong. I let it happen because it was easier than earning things on my own. I'm sorry. Morgana Elizabeth White. Christine's voice could have cut glass. Save it, Mum. Yale already called. They're rescinding my early acceptance pending an investigation into my application claims. The board chairwoman nodded. All your college applications are under review. Fabricating volunteer work is a serious offence. I watched Christine's carefully constructed world crumble. Years of manipulation, exposed in one evening. The social currency she'd hoarded, worthless now. Yara, Dean Oliver called. The press would like some photos of our new scholar. As cameras flashed, Damien whispered, You didn't just win. You changed the whole game." Family friends who'd been praising Morgan hours ago now crowded around me, their compliments tinged with awkward awareness of their previous allegiances. Every "we always knew you had potential" felt like another brick falling from Christine's wall of influence. My phone buzzed with a text from Destiny. "Check Twitter. You're trending." The hashtag #Quiet Revenge was filling with stories from other students who'd faced similar sabotage. My exposure of Christine's tactics had opened a floodgate. "Miss Yara," a reporter approached, "how does it feel to overcome such systematic family opposition?" Before I could answer, Morgan stepped forward. "Let me tell you exactly how my family tried to destroy her. It's time someone told the truth." Christine's gasp was audible across the room. "Morgan, don't you dare." "Or what, Mom? You'll ruin my reputation?" "Pretty sure we just covered that." As Morgan began detailing years of manipulation to the press, my mother touched my arm. "I failed you." "Yes," I agreed. "But that's not the end of the story." "What is?" I looked around the room, at Destiny documenting everything, at Damien standing proud beside me, at Dean Oliver watching with satisfaction as justice played out. The end is me succeeding not despite you, but because of you. Every obstacle taught me persistence. Every lie taught me truth. Every betrayal taught me integrity. The board chairwoman approached with a champagne glass. "To our newest scholar, who proved that character reveals itself not in victory, but in how we achieve it." As applause filled the room again, Damien grinned. "You didn't climb over them." "I buried them in their own scaffolding," I finished, remembering his words from before. My phone lit up with one final notification. Morgan had posted a new Instagram story. No filters, no perfect pose, just raw honesty. "Congratulations to my cousin Yara. You won by being everything I pretended to be. I have a lot to learn." Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction, building something so beautiful from the ashes that even your enemies have to acknowledge its worth. And sometimes, just sometimes, it helps others find their truth too. Moving into my dorm room felt surreal. Each box I unpacked represented another step away from the toxicity I'd left behind. Destiny helped me hang fairy lights while Damien assembled my desk. "Your mother's called 3 times today," Destiny said, checking my phone notifications. "I know." I pinned up the note Dean Oliver had slipped me at orientation. "Resilience, when witnessed, is power. Never apologize for that." A knock at the door made us all turn. Morgan stood there, looking smaller somehow without her usual designer clothes and perfect makeup. "Can we talk?" Destiny and Damien exchanged glances. "We'll grab coffee," Damien said, pulling Destiny along. Morgan sat on my unmade bed. "I got accepted to State University. Regular admission, no strings pulled. It feels different." "Different good?" "Different real." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Mum's in therapy. Mandatory. After the board reported her actions to her employer. She might lose her position at the foundation. And you're telling me this because?" "Because I'm trying to understand how you did it. Stayed true to yourself when everyone was trying to reshape you." I sat beside her. I had help. Destiny showed me how to document everything. Damien witnessed the truth. Dean Oliver believed in merit over manipulation. "I never had real friends," Morgan admitted. "Just allies in Mum's games." My phone buzzed again. My mother calling. Morgan noticed. "You should talk to her. Aunt Mary's different now. The therapy she started, she talks about you a lot." "What about Christine?" Morgan's face hardened. "She's not speaking to me since I gave that interview exposing everything. Says I betrayed the family." "You chose truth over loyalty. That takes courage." "No," she shook her head. "You showed courage. I just finally faced consequences." Another knock. This time it was Dean Oliver. "Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you should know. Your story has prompted 3 other universities to launch investigations into their scholarship selection processes. Seems your experience wasn't unique." "Mum's methods were pretty standard in our circle," Morgan confirmed. "It's why she was so confident they'd work. Well, they won't anymore." He handed me a folder. The board is implementing new protocols to prevent family interference in selections. We're calling it the Integrity Initiative. They'd like you to consult." My phone buzzed yet again. This time I answered. "Mum?" "Yara," her voice cracked. "I'm outside your dorm. I know I don't deserve to be here, but I brought your favourite study snacks. And an apology. A real one." I looked at Morgan, who nodded encouragingly. "Come up. Room 342. When she arrived, her arms full of snacks and tears in her eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. My mother, stripped of pretense, just trying to be better. "I've been reading about generational trauma," she said, setting down the bags, "about how we pass down our fears, our need for control. I didn't protect you because I never learned how to protect myself from Christine?" "That's no excuse," I said quietly. "No, it's not. But it's why I'm in therapy now, why I'm learning to be stronger. You showed me how." Dean Oliver cleared his throat. "Family healing takes time, but so does academic excellence, and that's what we're here for. Shall we discuss your first research project?" As we talked about my upcoming work, more students stopped by. Some had read about the scholarship story, others had their own tales of family pressure. My room became a kind of impromptu support group. "You should start a formal organisation," Damien suggested, returning with coffee. "Help other students document and expose academic sabotage." "Already on it," Destiny grinned, pulling up a website mock-up. "We're calling it Quiet Power?" My mother watched all this with wet eyes. "You've built something beautiful from our mistakes." "No," I corrected her. "I built something necessary from your choices. The beauty came from finally being free to be myself." Morgan stood to leave. "I should go. My first real college class starts tomorrow, and I actually need to study for it." "Hey, Morgan," I called after her. "Good luck. For real this time." She smiled, a genuine smile, not the practiced one she'd worn for so long. "You too, cousin, you too." As evening fell and my room slowly emptied, I looked at the note from Dean Oliver again. Below it, I pinned my own addition. "They called me unstable. Turns out, I was just unshakable, and that made all the difference."
I stood in the rain, watching the movers carry elegant furniture into my sister Emma's new mansion. A wedding gift from our parents. A $2.8 million house in the most prestigious neighborhood in Boston. Meanwhile, I lived in a small apartment above the bookstore where I worked, barely making ends meet. "Isn't it perfect for them?" my mother gushed, not noticing how soaked I'd gotten standing outside. "Emma and James will be so happy here. And there's plenty of room for grandchildren." I forced a smile, thinking of the congratulations card I'd scraped together money to buy. "It's beautiful, Mom." Emma emerged from the house, immaculate in designer clothes, her new engagement ring catching what little sunlight filtered through the clouds. "Madison, you finally made it. What do you think of our little starter home?" Starter home. As if a nearly $3 million mansion was just a stepping stone. "It's lovely," I managed. "The perfect wedding present." "Oh, don't be jealous, Maddie." Emma laughed, using the nickname I'd always hated. "I'm sure you'll find someone special too. Maybe one of those nice boys at the bookstore." Our mother jumped in. "You know the Henderson's son is still single. He's an accountant now. Very stable career." I bit my tongue. At 32, I had a master's degree in literature and was working on my first novel. But to them, I was just the family disappointment. The daughter who chose books over business, dreams over security. "I should go," I said quietly. "My shift starts soon." "On a Saturday?" Mom frowned. "But we're having a family dinner to celebrate Emma's house." "Some of us have to work weekends, Mom." Emma rolled her eyes. "Still so dramatic, Maddie. This is why you struggle, you know. Always choosing the hard way instead of accepting help. Help, like the full ride to business school I'd turned down. like the position at Dad's firm I'd refused, like the arranged dates with suitable men I'd avoided. What they never understood was that their help always came with strings, golden handcuffs designed to shape me into their version of success. The bookstore's short-staffed, I said, already turning to leave. And I need the hours. Well, Mom sighed, at least take some leftovers home. I hate thinking of you eating alone in that tiny apartment. I didn't tell her that my tiny apartment was my sanctuary, a space filled with books, art, and peace. A place where I could write without judgment, dream without limits. The next morning, I stopped at Pete's corner store for my usual coffee. Pete, a grandfather figure who'd been running the shop for 40 years, greeted me with unusual excitement. "Madison, did you check your ticket?" I blinked, confused. Then I remembered the lottery ticket I'd bought 2 days ago. A silly impulse purchase with my last $5 when the jackpot had hit record numbers. Not yet. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet. What were the winning numbers? Pete's eyes sparkled. "Check the news, sweetheart." I pulled out my phone, finding the lottery website. The numbers appeared on screen. 7, 13, 24, 31, 42, 53. My hands started shaking. I looked at my ticket, then back at the screen. "Pete," my voice was barely a whisper, "I think I won." He grinned. "I know you did, honey. I watched them draw your numbers live last night. All 6 matching numbers. You just won $97 million. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I grabbed the counter for support. "Sit down before you fall down." Pete guided me to a chair. Deep breaths. "This is big news, but you need to be smart now. Don't tell anyone yet. Get a lawyer first, and for heaven's sake, sign that ticket." With trembling fingers, I signed the back of the ticket. Pete locked it in his safe, made me drink some water, and called his daughter, a respected financial attorney. "Caroline will meet you in an hour," he said. "She'll help you do this right." I nodded, still dazed. "Pete, my family." He squeezed my shoulder. "We'll find out soon enough. But right now, this is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you." As I waited for Caroline, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Family brunch tomorrow to discuss wedding plans. Wear something nice for once, and try not to be late like always." I stared at the message, thinking of her mansion, her perfect life, our parents' endless praise. For 20 years, I'd been the family afterthought, the daughter they'd written off as impractical, unsuccessful, lost. Now I had 97 million reasons to prove them wrong. I texted back, "Sorry, can't make it. I have something more important to do." For once, I wasn't lying. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new lawyer's office, signing the final papers to claim my winnings. Caroline, Pete's daughter, had been invaluable, helping me set up trusts, investment accounts, and ironclad privacy protections. "Remember," she said, reviewing the documents, "once we submit these, your name becomes public record. Are you ready for that?" I thought of the changes I'd already made. I'd quietly resigned from the bookstore, leaving my manager a generous check to help hire and train my replacement. I'd bought a beautiful but modest house in a quiet neighborhood, using a trust to keep my name off public records. And I'd started the groundwork for my own publishing company, determined to help other overlooked writers find their voices. "I'm ready," I said firmly. The next morning, my face was splashed across every news outlet in Boston. Local writer wins $97 million lottery jackpot. Bookstore employee becomes multimillionaire overnight. Madison Bennett claims record-breaking prize. My phone exploded with messages. Old classmates, distant relatives, forgotten acquaintances, all suddenly remembering my existence. But the messages I was waiting for came last. First, Emma. OMG, Maddie. Why didn't you tell us? Call me immediately. Then Mom. Madison Elizabeth Bennett. How could you keep this from your family? We're coming over right now. Where are you living? Finally, Dad. Your mother is hysterical. Call us this instant. I turned off my phone and poured myself a cup of tea, settling into my new home office. Through the window, I could see the garden where I planned to create a reading nook. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold, making the moment feel almost magical. My doorbell rang. Through the security camera, another of Caroline's suggestions, I saw them. My parents and Emma, standing on my porch. Emma was dressed like she was heading to a photo shoot, while my mother kept smoothing her designer dress nervously. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Madison, my mother burst out. We've been so worried. Why haven't you answered our calls? And how did you afford this house? The lottery money hasn't even been released yet and... Hello, Mother. I cut her off calmly. Would you like to come in? They filed into my living room, taking in the tasteful furnishings and wall-to-wall bookshelves with barely concealed surprise. Well, Emma said, running a finger along the shelf, I suppose now you can finally move to a better neighborhood. Maybe near my new house. There's a lovely little colonial for sale, only $4 million. I'm happy here, I interrupted. But thank you for your concern. Maddie, darling. My mother leaned forward, her voice dripping with honey. You have to understand our shock. This is life-changing money. You'll need guidance, proper financial advice. Your father knows several excellent wealth managers. I have a team of advisors, I said. And it's Madison, not Maddie. Don't be difficult, Emma snapped. We're trying to help. God knows you've never been good with money. Like that time I loaned you $10,000 for your starter business, I asked quietly. The one you never paid back. Emma's face flushed. That was different. I needed. What you needed was to take responsibility. I stood up, my voice steady. Something none of you have ever expected from her. Now see here. My father finally spoke, his face reddening. We've always supported you both equally. I laughed, actually laughed. Equally. You bought Emma a mansion for her wedding. You paid for her business school, her first car, her perfect wedding. What did you give me for graduation? A lecture about practical career choices. Because we worried about you. My mother cried. Your choices were so impractical. We just wanted. You wanted me to be like Emma. I finished. The perfect daughter. The sensible one. Well, guess what? My impractical choices led me here. My job at the bookstore, the one you all look down on, is where I bought the winning ticket. And now you can finally have a real life, Emma said, as if she was being generous. We can help you invest, get you into the right social circles. No. The room fell silent. What do you mean no? My father demanded. I walked to my desk and pulled out 3 envelopes. Emma, this is a cashier's check for $10,000, repaying the loan you've conveniently forgotten about. I handed her the first envelope. Mom, Dad, this is a check for $15,000, the total of every gift, every payment, every contribution you've ever made to my life. I've kept careful records. They stared at the envelopes, speechless. The third envelope, I continued, contains documents showing I've already established my own publishing company, created a charitable foundation for literacy programs, and set up my investments with one of the top firms in the country. I didn't need your guidance then, and I certainly don't need it now. But we're family, my mother whispered. Yes, we are. And family should love unconditionally. Support dreams, not squash them. Celebrate differences, not try to erase them. I walked to the door and opened it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my foundation board about funding new libraries in underserved communities. You're making a mistake, my father said stiffly. You need us. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. No, Dad, you need me. And that's the real reason you're here, isn't it? Emma stood up, her face a mask of fury. You think you're better than us now? Because of some lucky numbers? No, Emma, I always was. You just never saw it. As they left, my mother turned back, tears in her eyes. Madison, please. We made a terrible mistake. We see that now. Can't we start over? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw for the first time how small she seemed. How all of them seemed, trapped in their narrow view of success and worth. Maybe someday, I said softly, but not today. I closed the door on their protests, walking back to my office. On my desk sat the manuscript of my novel, a story about a girl finding her voice in a world that tried to silence her. It was time to write the next chapter. 6 months later, the launch party for Bennett Publishing House was everything I dreamed of. We transformed an old warehouse into a magical space filled with books, art, and possibility. Local authors whose works we'd signed mingled with literary agents and journalists, while kids from our literacy program proudly showed off their own stories in a special display area. Pete stood beside me, beaming like a proud father. Look at what you've built, Madison, and not a penny wasted on showing off. He was right. While I could have easily bought a gleaming downtown office tower, I'd chosen to renovate this historic building instead, creating a space that felt like home to writers and readers alike. The millions I'd won had been carefully invested in education programs, in supporting new authors, in building something meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Saw your company in the business journal. Must be nice having everything handed to you. Betito, James lost his job. We could use some family support right now. I deleted the message without responding. Over the past months, they tried everything. Guilt, manipulation, fake kindness, and finally, outright demands. Emma's starter mansion was apparently too small now. Mom and Dad's country club membership needed renewal. James's failed investments needed covering. I'd ignored them all. Miss Bennett? A young girl tugged at my sleeve. She was one of our literacy program students, clutching a notebook. Will you read my story? Of course, Sophie. I led her to a quiet corner, sitting down at her level. What's it about? A girl who finds a magic pen, she said shyly. Everything she writes comes true, but she has to figure out what's really important to write about. I smiled, thinking how wisdom sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Madison. I looked up. My mother stood there, looking uncomfortable in the casual atmosphere. She'd lost some of her polished perfection. The past months had been hard on them, I knew. Dad's firm had lost several major clients. Emma's perfect marriage was showing cracks, and their social circle had begun to shrink as their resources dwindled. Mom, this is a private event. I know. I had to talk to you. She glanced at Sophie. Alone? I turned to Sophie. Why don't you show your story to Miss Sarah? She's our children's book editor. After Sophie scampered off, I faced my mother. Well, your father's company is failing, she said bluntly. Emma's house is being foreclosed. Everything's falling apart, and you're here playing with children's stories. I stood up, anger flaring. Playing? Look around, Mom. Really look. See those kids? They're learning to love reading, to believe in their own voices. See those authors? They're getting chances they never had before. I'm not playing, I'm building something real. But your family has never respected my choices. I cut in. Even now, you're not here because you care about what I've built. You're here because you need money. She flinched. We're still your family. Are you? I walked her over to our wall of success stories. Photos of children reading, authors signing their first contracts, community programs making real change. Family celebrates each other's victories. Family supports each other's dreams. When was the last time you asked about my novel? My goals? My happiness? I don't know. Exactly. I turned to face her. The lottery didn't change who I am, Mom. It just gave me the freedom to stop seeking approval I was never going to get. Tears filled her eyes. We were wrong. I see that now. But can't you forgive us? Forgiveness isn't the issue, I said gently. I forgave you months ago. That's why I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people keep hurting you. What do you want from us? Nothing. That's the point. I don't need anything from you anymore. And until you can want a relationship with me that isn't about money or status or your idea of success, we don't have anything to discuss. A commotion near the entrance caught my attention. Emma had arrived with Dad and James in tow. Really? I sighed. You all came to ambush me at my company's launch. We're desperate. Emma cried, mascara running down her cheeks. James lost everything in that investment scheme. The bank is taking our house, and Daddy's company is dying. Please, Maddie, you have to help us. The room had gone quiet. Our guests tried to pretend they weren't watching the drama unfold. I looked at my family. Really looked at them. Dad, gray and deflated without his usual power. Emma, designer clothes now slightly worn, desperate for a bailout. Mom, torn between pride and need. No, I said firmly. No. Dad's voice cracked. I'll make you all a different offer instead. I pulled out my phone, pulling up some photos. This is Carter Financial Services. They're looking for experienced advisors with community connections. Dad, they've agreed to interview you for a senior position. No guarantees, but a fair shot. I swiped to the next photo. Emma, the local arts center needs a fundraising coordinator. With your social skills and event planning experience, you'd be perfect. James, my friend's construction company is hiring project managers. Real work, fair pay. You want us to work for other people. Emma looked horrified. I want you to earn your own way. Like I did. Build something real. Find out who you are without the fancy titles and borrowed money. And if we refuse, Dad asked stiffly, then you'll figure something else out. But you won't get a dime from me to maintain the lifestyle that made us all so unhappy. Mom stepped forward, surprising me. The Arts Center, they really think Emma would be good at fundraising? Yes, because she is good at it. When she's actually trying, not just playing the perfect daughter. Emma wiped her eyes, smearing expensive mascara. I don't know how to be anything else. Yes, you do. I took her hand, the first time we touched in months. You're smart, capable, and determined. Use those qualities for something meaningful instead of just appearances. Dad cleared his throat. The position at Carter Financial. When's the interview? Tomorrow at 10. Don't wear your Rolex. Show them your experience, not your ego. One by one, they nodded. Not happy, not grateful, but perhaps thoughtful. As they left, Mom turned back. Your company, it's really amazing, Madison. I'm sorry we never saw. I know, I said softly. Maybe someday you'll see me too. After they were gone, Pete appeared at my side. You okay, kiddo? I looked around at my publishing house, at the dreams being born, the stories being told, the lives being changed. You know what, Pete? I really am. Sophie came running back, waving her notebook. Ms. Bennett. Ms. Sarah loved my story. She said maybe someday it could be a real book. I knelt down beside her. Want to know a secret, Sophie? Every real book starts with someone brave enough to tell their story. Like you. Like all of us. Later that night, I sat in my garden reading nook, working on my novel. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. I have an interview at the Arts Center tomorrow. Any advice? I smiled, typing back. Be yourself, your real self. The lottery hadn't just given me millions. It had given me the chance to show my family and myself what real wealth looked like. Not the money in my bank account, but the courage to finally be exactly who I was meant to be. And that was worth more than any number could measure. You're fired. 2 words I never expected to hear from my own father. Yet there he sat behind his mahogany desk, his steel-gray eyes fixed on me with a coldness I'd never seen before. The office felt suffocating, despite the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Dad, if you just listen about the Henderson account. He held up his hand, silencing me. It's Mr. Matthews in this office, Alexandra. And the Henderson account was the final straw. Your innovative approach cost us a $12 million contract. I gripped the arms of my chair, forcing myself to stay calm. The traditional approach wasn't working. If we just tried my strategy for 1 more month. Enough. He slammed his hand on the desk, making his best CEO award rattle. This isn't some startup playground where you can experiment with wild ideas. This is Matthews and Sons, a company that's been built on tradition and proven methods for 40 years. I did back a laugh at the irony of Matthews and Sons, considering I, his only daughter, had worked here since I was 16, starting in the mailroom and working my way up through every department. Meanwhile, my younger brother David had waltzed in straight from business school into a vice president position. The board agrees with me, he continued, shuffling some papers on his desk. You're not cut out for business, Alexandra. Not at this level. Maybe something smaller would suit you better. A boutique shop, perhaps, or a small local consulting firm. The condescension in his voice made my blood boil. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my charcoal gray suit, the same one I'd worn to countless meetings where I'd brought in millions in new business. Business that apparently didn't matter now. You're making a mistake, I said quietly. He didn't even look up. Your severance package will be handled by HR. Please clear out your office by the end of the day. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Dad? He glanced up, irritation flashing across his face. Remember this moment. The walk to my office felt like a funeral march. Employees quickly looked away as I passed, news of my firing already spreading through the corporate grapevine. Only Janet, my assistant for the past 5 years, met my eyes. "I heard," she said, following me into my office. "It's not right, Alex. Everyone knows the Henderson account was lost because David promised them impossible delivery dates." I started packing my belongings into a cardboard box. Doesn't matter now. David's a Matthews son, and I'm just the daughter who doesn't understand traditional business. Janet watched me take down my framed Harvard MBA and various awards. "What will you do?" I carefully wrapped the photo of my mother. She passed away when I was 12, but I still remembered her last words to me. "Don't let them dim your light, sweetheart. Shine anyway." "I'm going to build something," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Something bigger than Matthews and Sons could ever be." Janet's eyes lit up. "Need an executive assistant?" I smiled, really looked at her for the first time that day. Janet wasn't just an assistant. She was a brilliant operations manager trapped in an administrative role because of the old boys club mentality at Matthews and Sons. "How about chief operations officer instead?" Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." I handed her my personal card, the one without the Matthews and Sons logo. "Call me tomorrow if you're interested. And Janet, don't tell anyone about this conversation." The elevator ride down to the lobby was surreal. 15 years of my life, reduced to one cardboard box. I'd given everything to this company, sacrificed relationships, worked weekends and holidays, brought in major accounts that had doubled our revenue. And none of it mattered, because I wasn't a son. As I pushed through the revolving doors onto 5th Avenue, my phone buzzed. A text from David. "Tough break, sis. But don't worry, I'll take good care of your clients. Maybe retail is more your speed." I didn't respond. Instead, I hailed a cab and gave the driver an address in Brooklyn. Time to visit the one person who had always believed in me. 20 minutes later, I climbed the stairs to a modest brownstone and knocked on the familiar red door. It opened to reveal an elegant woman in her 70s, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the late hour. "Alexandra?" My grandmother's eyes narrowed as she took in my appearance and the box in my arms. "He didn't." "He did." She ushered me inside, straight through to her cozy kitchen where a pot of tea was already brewing. Some things never changed. Grandma Rose always seemed to know when she was needed. "Tell me everything," she said, setting out her best china teacups. So I did. I told her about the Henderson account, about David's impossible promises, about Dad's coldness, and the board's decision. She listened without interrupting, her bright blue eyes, so different from my father's gray ones, taking in every detail. When I finished, she got up and walked to her study. I heard her opening drawers, shuffling papers. She returned with a thick manila envelope. "I've been waiting for this day," she said, sliding the envelope across the table. "Your mother knew it would come too. She made me promise to give you this when it did." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax, and a folder filled with documents. My eyes widened as I read through them. "Grandma, this is your mother's inheritance," she finished. "The one your father knows nothing about. Her family's shipping company holdings, real estate investments, everything she built before she married him. All in a trust, waiting for you." I stared at the numbers. Millions. Not as much as Matthews and Sons was worth, but more than enough to start something new. Why didn't you tell me before? Grandma Rose took a sip of her tea. Because your mother knew you needed to try it his way first, to give him a chance to see your worth. She set down her cup with a decisive clink. He failed that test rather spectacularly, wouldn't you say? I looked at the documents again, plans already forming in my mind. The Henderson account. They were looking for exactly what I proposed. Innovation, modernization, a fresh approach. Then perhaps, Grandma Rose smiled, it's time to show them what Alexandra Matthews can really do. I stayed at my grandmother's house late into the night planning. By the time I left, I had the beginnings of a strategy that would change everything. Dad thought I wasn't cut out for business. Fine. I'd show him exactly what kind of business I was cut out for. The game was about to change, and Matthews and Sons wouldn't know what hit them until it was too late. 1 year later, the Henderson Group's downtown headquarters buzzed with anticipation. In the main conference room, Janet, now my COO, was setting up for our presentation. Through the glass walls, I could see Thomas Henderson himself pacing, checking his watch every few minutes. They're here, Janet whispered, glancing at her tablet. Matthews and Sons representatives just arrived in the lobby. I smoothed down my tailored Armani suit, crimson red, a far cry from the conservative grays and blacks my father preferred. Right on time to watch their biggest account slip away. Alex. Janet's eyes sparkled with mischief. Did you plan this? The presentation time? Pure coincidence. I smiled. The fact that my father and brother are desperate to keep Henderson's business while I'm here to take it. Now that's just good strategy. The last year had been a whirlwind. Using my mother's inheritance and Grandma Rose's connections, I'd built Nova Enterprises from the ground up. We specialized in exactly what Matthews and Sons feared most: innovative business solutions for the digital age. Janet had been instrumental, bringing over key talent who'd been overlooked at Matthews and Sons. Turns out I wasn't the only one tired of traditional methods. The conference room door opened. Thomas Henderson entered, followed by his board members. And behind them, looking significantly more worn than the last time I'd seen them, came my father and brother. Dad stopped short when he saw me, his face draining of color. David actually took a step backward, nearly colliding with a board member. Alexandra? My father's voice cracked slightly. Mr. Matthews? I replied coolly, extending my hand. What a surprise. I wasn't aware Matthews and Sons would be joining us today. Thomas Henderson looked between us, confusion evident on his face. You know each other. Ms. Matthews used to work for us, my father said stiffly, ignoring my outstretched hand. Matthews? Thomas raised an eyebrow. Any relation? Just a former employee. Dad cut in quickly. Actually, I smiled. I'm his daughter, but that's ancient history. Shall we begin the presentation? The next hour was a masterclass in everything my father had dismissed as wild ideas. I showed them Nova's digital transformation strategy, our AI-driven analytics, our cloud-based solutions, everything the Henderson Group had wanted a year ago when Matthews and Sons had insisted on sticking to outdated methods. David's face grew increasingly red as board members nodded appreciatively. My father sat stone-faced, but I could see his hands clenching under the table. Very impressive, Ms. Matthews, Thomas said when I finished. This is exactly what we've been looking for. But I have to ask, why didn't you propose these solutions when you were with Matthews and Sons? The room went silent. All eyes turned to my father. Oh, what I did, I replied softly. In fact, It was my last presentation before leaving the company. Wasn't it, Mr. Matthews? Dad's jaw tightened. Before he could respond, Thomas Henderson stood up. Well, I think we've seen everything we need. Ms. Matthews, your proposal is exactly what the Henderson Group needs to move forward. I believe our legal team already has the contracts drawn up. What? David spluttered. You can't be serious. We've handled your business for 20 years. And in those 20 years, you've fallen behind every technological advancement in the industry. Thomas replied firmly. It's time for a change. As the contracts were being signed, I caught my father's eye. He looked older somehow, defeated. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but then I remembered that day in his office, his cold dismissal of everything I tried to build. The Henderson account was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, Nova Enterprises systematically targeted Matthews and Sons' biggest clients. We didn't poach them. We simply offered them what they'd been begging for: innovation, efficiency, results. One by one, they jumped ship. Then came the day I'd been waiting for. Janet burst into my office, her face flushed with excitement. Alex, you need to see this. She handed me her tablet. On the screen was a financial news article. Matthews and Sons stock plummets amid client exodus. Bankruptcy fears loom. Below was a photo of my father leaving his office, looking haggard. The caption read, CEO Robert Matthews declines to comment on company's future. My phone rang. Grandma Rose's number. I just saw the news, she said when I answered. How are you feeling? I looked out my office window at the Manhattan skyline. From here, I could see the Matthews and Sons building, no longer the towering symbol of success it once was. I didn't do this for revenge, I said quietly. I know, darling. You did it because it needed to be done. Because sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to build something better. They're going to lose everything, aren't they? Unless someone steps in to save them. There was a knowing tone in her voice. Someone who understands both innovation and tradition. Before I could respond, Janet appeared in my doorway again, her face serious. Alex, your father is here. He's asking to see you. I took a deep breath. Send him in. Alexandra. Grandma Rose said quickly, remember what your mother always said. Don't let them dim your light. I finished. I remember. No, dear. The other thing, she said. Sometimes the strongest bridges are built over the deepest divides. I hung up and straightened my shoulders as Janet showed my father in. He looked nothing like the imposing figure who'd fired me a year ago. His suit was wrinkled, his tie slightly askew. Alexandra, he said softly, we need to talk. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same position I'd been in that day in his office. How the tables had turned. Yes, I replied. I believe we do. My father sat across from me, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The mighty Robert Matthews, reduced to asking his incompetent daughter for help. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The board is meeting tomorrow, he began, his voice rough. They're voting on whether to file for bankruptcy or seek immediate merger. He paused, swallowing hard. David's already resigned. Took a position with Goldman Sachs this morning. Of course he had. David had always been good at abandoning ship when things got tough. And you're here because... I kept my voice neutral, professional. Because you won. He looked up, meeting my eyes. You did exactly what I said you couldn't do. Built something remarkable. Modern. Successful. His hands trembled slightly. While I watched 40 years of work crumble, because I was too proud, too stubborn to change. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Did you ever wonder why I stayed at Matthews & Sons for 15 years? Working my way up from the mailroom when you could have given me a top position like you did David. He shook his head. Because I loved that company. Not for its name, not for its prestige, but for what it could be. Every innovation I suggested, every change I tried to implement, it wasn't to destroy tradition. It was to help Matthews & Sons evolve. And I shut you down at every turn, he admitted quietly. Yes, you did. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Do you know what really hurt, Dad? Not the firing. Not even choosing David over me. It was that you never once asked why I thought we needed to change. Tell me now. I turned back to face him. Because business isn't about maintaining what worked yesterday. It's about building what will work tomorrow. Mom understood that. It's why her family's shipping company survived when all their competitors went under. His head snapped up. Your mother's company. But that was sold after she died. No, Dad, it wasn't. I pulled out the documents Grandma Rose had given me that night, sliding them across the desk. Mom left it in trust for me. She knew someday I'd need it, either to save Matthews & Sons or to build something new. He stared at the papers, realization dawning on his face. All this time, she knew. She saw in you what I couldn't. What you wouldn't, I corrected gently. He nodded, accepting the truth of it. So this is it then. You'll watch Matthews & Sons dissolve, knowing you were right all along. I pressed the intercom. Janet, bring in the proposal, please. Janet entered with a thick folder, placing it on my desk with a knowing smile before leaving us alone again. What's this? My father asked. A merger proposal. Nova Enterprises wants to acquire Matthews & Sons. His eyes widened. You'd buy us out? No. I sat down again, opening the folder. I'm proposing a true merger. Nova's innovation and digital expertise combined with Matthews & Sons' 40 years of industry relationships and experience. Not destroying tradition, but evolving it. You'd save the company? After everything? You once told me I wasn't cut out for business, I said, pushing the proposal toward him. But what you never understood is that real business isn't about crushing competitors or maintaining power. It's about building something lasting, something meaningful. He picked up the proposal with shaking hands. And the name. Matthews Nova, I replied, honoring the past while embracing the future. And my role? You'd stay on as Chairman Emeritus, focusing on client relationships, what you've always done best. I'd be CEO, leading the company's strategic direction. I paused. As equals this time, father and daughter, finally working together instead of against each other. He was quiet for a long moment, reading through the proposal. Finally, he looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Respect. Your mother would be so proud of you, he said softly. She'd be proud of us both, if we can make this work. He stood up, straightening his tie, a glimpse of the Robert Matthews of old. The board meets at 9 tomorrow morning. Join me. I'll be there. After he left, I called Grandma Rose. Well, she asked, how did it go? We're merging the companies. Matthews Nova, bringing the best of both worlds together. She chuckled. Your mother always said the strongest bridges are built over the deepest divides. You've built quite a bridge, Alexandra. The next morning, I stood beside my father in the Matthews & Sons boardroom, the same room where I'd presented countless proposals that had been rejected. The board members watched in stunned silence as we presented the merger plan together. The vote was unanimous. Later that afternoon, I sat in what had once been my father's office, now mine. The Best CEO award still stood on the shelf, but beside it now sat a framed photo of my mother. Janet knocked and entered. "The press release is ready. Want to take a look?" I smiled, thinking of how far we'd both come. "In a minute. First, call the Henderson Group. I want to personally tell them about the merger." "Already done," she grinned. Thomas Henderson said, and I quote, "It's about time those Matthews women took charge." I laughed, then turned to look out at the city. Somewhere out there, in an office much like this one, my father was probably doing the same thing, seeing New York not as it was, but as it could be. A year ago, he'd fired me for not understanding business. Now together, we were building something neither of us could have created alone. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing them a better way forward. And sometimes, just sometimes, the black sheep of the family becomes its greatest legacy. That evening, I visited my mother's grave, placing a single white rose beside her headstone. The merger announcement was already making headlines. Matthews Nova, a new era in business. "You were right, Mom," I whispered. "About everything." My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Dinner tomorrow? I'd love to hear more of your ideas about the digital transformation project." I smiled, typing back, "Looking forward to it." The sun was setting over Manhattan, casting long shadows across the cemetery. But I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow anymore. I was casting my own light, bright enough for us all to see by. And that, perhaps, was the greatest success of all. My mother's annual Christmas dinner had always been more of a performance than a family gathering. The crystal chandelier casting its golden glow over the mahogany dining table, the fine china plates perfectly arranged, the expensive wine poured into delicate glasses. It was all part of her carefully orchestrated show of family perfection. But this year was different. The usual tension that simmered beneath our polite smiles had turned into something heavier, darker. Grandma Rose's empty chair at the head of the table seemed to mock our pretense of normalcy. "Sarah, darling, how's the hospital?" My mother's voice carried that familiar note of pride as she addressed my older sister. "I heard you're being considered for chief of surgery." I took a slow sip of water, already knowing what would come next. Sarah's achievements had always been the centerpiece of these family dinners, each accomplishment displayed like another jewel in my mother's crown. "Actually, Mom," Sarah's perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her wine glass, her engagement ring catching the light. "I got the position last week. Youngest chief of surgery in the hospital's history." The table erupted in congratulations. My father beamed, my mother dabbed at her eyes with an embroidered napkin, and my younger brother Michael, the successful corporate lawyer, raised his glass in a toast. "To Sarah," he announced, continuing the Bennett family legacy of excellence. I stared down at my untouched dinner, fighting the urge to point out that saving their struggling investment firm last year through my anonymous consulting work was also quite an achievement. But they didn't know about that, just like they didn't know about my thriving international business consultancy or the fact that I'd helped 3 Fortune 500 companies avoid bankruptcy in the past year. No, to them, I was still just Olivia, the disappointment, the black sheep who'd refused to follow the prescribed path of medicine or law, the daughter who'd walked away from a promising position at their investment firm to start her own business. "And what about you, Olivia?" My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. Still doing that? What do you call it? Freelance work? The way she said freelance made it sound like I was selling handmade crafts at local fairs, rather than running a multi-million-dollar consultancy. I'm doing fine, Mother. I kept my voice neutral, years of practice helping me maintain my composure. Fine. Sarah's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. At your age, you should be more than just fine. Remember when you left the firm? Dad gave you such a wonderful opportunity, and you just threw it away. I remembered that day clearly. I discovered serious discrepancies in the firm's accounting, tried to warn my father, but he dismissed my concerns. 2 years later, those same issues nearly bankrupted them. I'd stepped in anonymously through my consultancy to save them, but they never knew. Sarah's right. My mother sighed dramatically. If only you'd listened to us, you could have had a real career by now. Instead, she gestured vaguely at me, as if my entire existence was somehow lacking. Speaking of real careers, Michael chimed in, straightening his designer tie. My firm just landed the Maxwell account. $3 billion in assets. He smirked in my direction. But I suppose that's a bit beyond your scope, sis. How's your little consulting thing going? I thought about the confidential documents sitting in my home office, papers showing that the Maxwell account was actually being managed by my company, with Michael's firm handling only the basic legal work. But again, they didn't know that. It's going well enough, I replied softly, cutting into my salmon with deliberate precision. Well enough to afford that dress. Sarah's eyes flicked over my simple black sheath dress. I could take you shopping sometime. I know some lovely consignment shops. My dress was actually a hand-tailored piece from a small Parisian atelier, costing more than Sarah's monthly salary. But they didn't need to know that either. That's so thoughtful of you, Sarah, I murmured, fighting back a smile as I thought of the Channel bags gathering dust in my closet. The conversation drifted back to Sarah's accomplishments, Michael's cases, and my mother's social circle. I sat quietly, letting their words wash over me like background noise. My thoughts kept drifting to Grandma Rose, the only person in this family who'd ever really seen me. She passed away 3 months ago, but her last words to me still echoed in my mind. Patience, my dear. Sometimes the best revenge is letting them underestimate you until the perfect moment. The perfect moment was coming sooner than they knew. Tomorrow morning, the family would gather at Mr. Harrison's office for the reading of Grandma's will. They were all so certain about what would happen. The family estate split between Sarah and Michael, the vacation homes, the investment portfolios, all divided between the successful siblings. But Grandma Rose had always been cleverer than anyone gave her credit for. She'd seen through the family's pretense, recognized their hollow achievements for what they were. Most importantly, she'd known exactly what I'd built, while they were all too busy looking down their noses at me. I heard from Mr. Harrison today, my mother announced, pulling me from my thoughts. The will reading is at 10 tomorrow. I assume you'll be there, Olivia? Though really, it's more a formality for you. Of course, Mother. I dabbed my lips with my napkin, hiding my smile. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Just try not to be disappointed, Sarah added with false sympathy. We all know Grandma Rose understood the importance of keeping the family legacy in capable hands. If only they knew that Grandma Rose had been my first investor, that she'd helped me establish my company, while they were all dismissing my dreams as foolish fantasies. If only they knew that their precious family legacy was already in my hands. But they would find out soon enough. Tomorrow, their carefully constructed world of superiority would come crashing down. Tomorrow, They would learn that the black sheep they dismissed for so long was actually the wolf they should have feared. I raised my water glass, offering them a smile that none of them could quite read. "To family," I said quietly. They all echoed the toast, their glasses clinking with expensive certainty. None of them noticed the glint in my eye, the slight curve of my lips that wasn't quite a smile. None of them had any idea what was coming. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Harrison. "Everything is prepared for tomorrow, Ms. Bennett, just as your grandmother arranged." I didn't reply. Instead, I parked my car in the private garage of my penthouse apartment, the one my family thought was a modest rental in a developing neighborhood, and made my way to my home office. The wall of windows offered a spectacular view of the city skyline, lights twinkling like stars against the dark sky. Opening my safe, I pulled out a thick manila envelope. Inside was Grandma Rose's letter to me, written 6 months before her death. I'd read it so many times I knew the words by heart, but tonight I needed to see them again. "My dearest Olivia, they never saw you clearly, did they? Too busy preening in their own reflections to notice the quiet strength you were building. But I saw you. I saw how you turned their dismissal into determination, their doubt into drive. Tomorrow, they'll finally see what I've seen all along. The black sheep of the family isn't lost. She's been leading the flock all along. All my love, Grandma Rose." I placed the letter back in the safe, next to the documents that would change everything tomorrow. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, a rare vintage that cost more than Michael's monthly mortgage payment, and settled into my favorite armchair. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. Mr. Harrison's law office occupied the entire top floor of one of the city's most prestigious buildings. As I stepped out of the elevator at precisely 9:45 a.m., I couldn't help but smile at the irony. I actually owned this building through one of my shell corporations, not that my family knew that. The reception area was already full. Sarah sat perched on an expensive leather chair, her surgeon's hands fidgeting with her pearl necklace. Michael paced by the window, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. My parents sat together, my mother's face carefully composed, though her fingers drummed restlessly against her designer handbag. "Cutting it rather close, aren't you?" Sarah's voice dripped with disapproval as I walked in. I checked my watch, still 15 minutes early, but didn't bother responding. Instead, I took a seat near the window, smoothing down my simple black dress. The same one they'd mockingly suggested came from a consignment shop. Now, my mother interjected with forced cheerfulness. "Let's all try to remember what Grandma Rose would want. Family harmony." Michael snorted. "Family harmony? Please, Mother. We all know why we're here. The family estate needs proper management, and some of us," his eyes flickered meaningfully toward me, "clearly aren't equipped for that responsibility." Before I could respond, Mr. Harrison's assistant opened the conference room doors. "The family may enter now." We filed in like actors taking our places on stage. The conference room was impressive, all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. At the head of the long table sat Mr. Harrison, his silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses giving him an appropriately grave appearance. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years of legal practice. "We're here today for the reading of Rose Eleanor Bennett's last will and testament." I watched my family settle into their seats, all of them wearing nearly identical expressions of barely concealed anticipation. They'd spent the last 3 months since Grandma's death carefully planning how they'd divide her considerable estate. Before we begin, Mr. Harrison continued, I must stress that what I'm about to read reflects your grandmother's explicit wishes. She was, he paused, his eyes meeting mine for a brief moment, very specific about certain conditions. Conditions? My father frowned. What conditions? The estate should simply be divided between the children, as is traditional in our family. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. Perhaps it's best if I simply read the will. He opened a thick leather portfolio and began. I, Rose Eleanor Bennett, being of sound mind and body, declare this to be my last will and testament. The initial paragraphs were standard legal language. I watched my siblings grow increasingly impatient, Michael checking his watch, Sarah tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the table. Then came the part they'd been waiting for. Regarding the distribution of my estate, valued at approximately $48 million. Sarah sat up straighter. Michael stopped checking his phone. I hereby declare that the entire estate, including all properties, investments, and assets, shall be placed under the sole control of my granddaughter, Olivia Bennett. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. What? Sarah's voice came out as a strangled whisper. Mr. Harrison continued reading, his voice steady. However, Olivia will have the authority to distribute portions of the estate to other family members, if and only if she deems them worthy. Her decisions in this matter shall be final and binding. This is ridiculous. Michael exploded, jumping to his feet. She can't do this. I assure you, she can and did, Mr. Harrison replied calmly. Furthermore, there's more. My mother had gone pale. More. Yes, the will continues. To ensure my wishes are carried out, I have arranged for all family trust funds, including those previously established for Sarah and Michael Bennett, to be transferred under Olivia's control, effective immediately. The chaos that erupted was exactly what I'd expected. Sarah burst into tears, her perfect makeup beginning to run. Michael started shouting about contesting the will. My mother looked like she might faint. My father stood up, his face red with anger. This is preposterous. Olivia doesn't know the first thing about managing this kind of wealth. She runs a small consulting business, for God's sake. I finally spoke, my voice quiet but clear. Actually, Father, there's something you should know about that small consulting business. Mr. Harrison handed me a folder. I opened it, laying out several documents on the table. Phoenix Global Consulting Group, I began, watching their faces. Ever heard of it? Michael scoffed. Of course. They're one of the largest financial consulting firms in the world. They're the ones who saved Dad's company last year when... His voice trailed off as realization began to dawn. When it was about to go bankrupt, I finished for him. Yes, I know. I'm the one who arranged that bailout. What are you talking about? Sarah demanded. I'm the founder and CEO of Phoenix Global, I said simply. Have been for the past 8 years. Grandma Rose was my first investor. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand flew to her throat, clutching her pearls. My father had gone from red to white, all the blood draining from his face. That's impossible, Michael stammered. Phoenix Global is worth just over $3 billion. I finished for him. Which makes Grandma's $48 million estate seem rather modest in comparison, doesn't it? Sarah's tears had stopped abruptly. But you live in that small apartment. You wear these simple clothes. I couldn't help but smile. That small apartment is a penthouse that costs more than your house, Sarah. And this simple dress? It's custom made by the same designer who refuses to sell to you because you were rude to his staff last year. Why? My mother whispered. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. You were all so convinced I was a failure, so certain I couldn't succeed without following your prescribed path. It was easier to let you think what you wanted. And Grandma knew. My father's voice was barely audible. She knew everything. I confirmed. She watched all of you dismiss me, underestimate me, mock my choices, and she watched me build something far beyond what any of you have achieved. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. There's one final part of the will I need to read. Everyone turned back to him, still shell-shocked. To my family, he read, I leave you with this lesson. True success isn't measured by titles or appearances, but by character and determination. I've watched you all pride yourselves on your achievements, while belittling the quiet ambition of my beloved Olivia. Today, you learn how wrong you've been. The black sheep of your family has become the shepherd of your flock. I stood up, gathering my papers. Mr. Harrison will provide you all with documents detailing the new financial arrangements. I suggest you review them carefully. Your trust funds will remain intact, but there will be conditions. Conditions? Michael's voice cracked. What conditions? I paused at the door, turning back to face my family. These people who had dismissed me for so long, who were now staring at me like they'd never seen me before. That's for me to decide, I said quietly. After all, I'm no longer the black sheep you can ignore. I'm the one holding the purse strings now. As I walked out of the conference room, I heard Sarah burst into fresh tears, Michael start swearing, and my mother call my name. But I didn't look back. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. A new notification popped up. Trust fund transfers complete. Everything had changed. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about finally being seen for who I really was. Grandma Rose would have been proud. The next few weeks were exactly what I'd expected. A storm of desperate attempts to regain control. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members, each one more manipulative than the last. From Sarah, Olivia, we need to talk. I know we've had our differences, but we're still sisters. You can't just cut us off like this. From Michael, this is completely unfair. I have commitments, investments. I need access to my trust fund. From Mother, darling, please. What will people say? The country club is already buzzing with rumors. We need to present a united front. I read each message but didn't respond. Instead, I focused on my work, steering Phoenix Global through a major merger while simultaneously restructuring my family's finances. It was during one of these late nights at the office that my assistant, Lisa, interrupted me. Miss Bennett, your sister is here. I looked up from my computer screen. Through the glass walls of my corner office, I could see Sarah standing in the reception area. Gone was her usual air of superiority. She looked smaller somehow, uncertain in a way I'd never seen before. Send her in. Sarah's eyes widened as she took in my office. The spectacular city view, the elegant furnishings, the clear symbols of power and success she'd never imagined I possessed. This is quite something, she managed, sinking into one of the leather chairs across from my desk. What do you want, Sarah? She flinched at my directness. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the will reading, about how we treated you, about all the things we never knew. You mean all the things you never bothered to ask about, I corrected quietly. Yes, she whispered. That too. She took a deep breath. The hospital board is reviewing my position as chief of surgery. Apparently, some questions have been raised about certain decisions I made. I nodded. I knew all about those decisions. The corners she'd cut, the favors she'd called in, the qualified candidates she'd pushed aside to secure her position. And you're here because? Because I need your help, she admitted, her voice cracking. Not just with money, but with everything. I've built my whole life on appearances, on what mother and father expected. I don't know who I am without that. I studied my sister's face, seeing for the first time the cracks in her perfect facade. Do you know why Grandma Rose invested in my company? Sarah shook her head. Because I showed her a real business plan. Not a name or a title or a designer outfit. Actual substance. She taught me that true success isn't about impressing others. It's about building something meaningful. Tears started rolling down Sarah's cheeks, smearing her expensive mascara. I never knew her like you did I? I was too busy trying to be perfect. No, I agreed. You didn't. I opened my drawer and pulled out a folder. This contains two things. First, a complete audit of your decisions at the hospital. Second, a plan to correct those mistakes, ethically and legally. Her hands trembled as she took the folder. Why would you help me after everything? Because Grandma Rose didn't make me the executor of her will for revenge. She did it to teach this family a lesson about value. Real value. The next visitor came 3 days later. Michael stormed into my office unannounced, his face red with anger. You've frozen all my accounts, he shouted. Do you have any idea what this is doing to my reputation? I calmly looked up from my computer. Sit down, Michael. I will not. Sit down. Something in my voice made him comply. I pulled up a document on my screen and turned the monitor toward him. Do you recognize this? His face went pale. It was a detailed report of every client he'd overcharged, every corner he'd cut, every ethical line he'd crossed in his pursuit of success. How did you? I know everything, Michael. Every shortcut, every lie, every client you've cheated. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate before taking control of the family's finances? He slumped in his chair. What are you going to do? That depends on you. I have a proposal, one that involves you actually earning your success for a change. The hardest conversation came last. My parents requested a meeting at their house, the home I'd grown up in, where I'd spent so many years feeling invisible. They were waiting in the living room, looking oddly diminished. The usual trappings of wealth surrounded them, but somehow they no longer seemed to fit. Olivia, my mother began, we've been talking about everything, about how we treated you. My father cleared his throat. When I nearly lost the company last year, it was you who saved it, wasn't it? Through Phoenix Global? I nodded. Why? He asked. Why help us after how we treated you? Because that's what families should do, I replied. Support each other, not tear each other down to feel superior. My mother started crying softly. We were so wrong about you, so terribly wrong. Yes, I agreed. You were. But that's not why I'm here. I opened my briefcase and took out several documents. These are the new terms for the family trust. There will be changes. They listened in silence as I outlined my conditions. No more trust fund payments without proof of actual work or contribution. No more blank checks for maintaining appearances. Resources would be allocated based on merit, not status. But what will people think? My mother whispered. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got us here, I pointed out. It's time for this family to develop some substance behind the style. 1 month later, I stood in my office, looking out over the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. She was starting over at a smaller hospital, working her way up properly this time. Michael had accepted a junior position at a respected law firm, learning to do things the right way. My parents were adjusting to their new reality, slowly learning to value achievement over appearance. On my desk sat a framed photo of Grandma Rose, her eyes twinkling with that knowing look she always had. Next to it lay her final letter to me, the one I'd only opened after the will reading. My dearest Olivia, by now they know, not just about your success, but about the strength they never saw. Use this power wisely. Not for revenge, but for redemption. Sometimes the black sheep becomes the shepherd not to punish the flock, but to guide them to better pastures. You've built something remarkable, my dear. Now help them build something real of their own. All my love, Grandma Rose. I smiled, touching the letter gently. She had known exactly what she was doing, setting up this elaborate lesson. It was never about the money. It was about forcing my family to finally see the truth about success, value, and what really matters. My phone buzzed again. A message from Sarah. Meeting for coffee tomorrow? I could use some advice about this new position. I texted back, yes. And Sarah? Wear whatever you want. No designer labels required. Looking out at the city lights, I felt at peace. The black sheep had indeed become the shepherd, but not to lord over the flock, to lead them towards something better, something real. Grandma Rose would have liked that.
Too old, I repeated, staring at Marcus Bennett across his polished mahogany desk. My voice was surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. After 15 years of dedicated service, that's your reason. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, a practiced look of sympathy on his face that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. Victoria, let's be honest. The tech industry moves fast. We need someone more dynamic, someone who can keep up with the pace. I was 53, not dead, and I'd just finished leading the most successful project launch in the company's history. But there I sat, being patronized by a man 20 years my junior, a man whose career I'd helped build. The severance package is generous, he continued, sliding a folder across the desk. 3 months' pay, health insurance through the end of the year. It's more than fair. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I thought about the drawer in my home office, filled with 15 years of carefully preserved documents. Letters, emails, memos, evidence of every questionable decision, every unethical move Marcus had made on his climb to the top, including the letter he thought he'd destroyed 5 years ago, the one that could bring his entire empire crumbling down. Is this decision final? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Years of practice had taught me how to hide my thoughts behind a mask of professional composure. Marcus nodded, already reaching for his phone, dismissing me from his mind. HR will help you with the paperwork. Security will escort you to clear out your desk. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. Very well. Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Marcus. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but I forced them out anyway. He glanced up, surprised by my calm acceptance. For a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Good. Let him wonder. As I walked out of his office for the last time, my mind was already racing with possibilities. I'd spent years watching, waiting, documenting. Now it was time to use what I gathered. The security guard who escorted me to my desk was Tommy, a kind man who'd always greeted me with a smile. I'm sorry about this, Ms. Reynolds, he said quietly as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. It's not right what they're doing. I gave them a small smile. Everything happens for a reason, Tommy. My colleagues watched from behind their computer screens as I packed, their faces a mix of pity and discomfort. None of them knew that my desk had been cleared of anything important weeks ago when I first noticed the signs of what was coming. The subtle exclusion from meetings, the younger employees being copied on my projects, Marcus's increasingly condescending tone. Jessica, my young assistant, approached with tears in her eyes. "Victoria, I can't believe they're doing this. You're the best manager we've ever had." I hugged her gently. "Keep your head up, Jess, and keep documenting everything like I taught you." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd been my protege, and she knew some of my methods, if not my reasons. The drive home was surreal. 15 years ended in a 15-minute meeting. But as I pulled into my driveway, a sense of calm settled over me. I'd known this day was coming, had prepared for it meticulously. Inside my house, I went straight to my home office. The room was simple but elegant, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a vintage desk I'd restored myself. I opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a false bottom, and lifted out a thick accordion file. 15 years of evidence organized by date and potential impact. But the crown jewel was the letter from 5 years ago, when Marcus had made his biggest mistake. He'd written it late one night, slightly drunk and feeling invincible after closing a major deal. The letter detailed exactly how he'd manipulated the numbers, shifted funds, and deceived the board. He tried to destroy it the next morning, but I'd already made copies. I set the letter aside and opened my laptop. Time to start organizing my evidence, preparing for the moment Marcus would realize what I had. It might take weeks or months, but eventually he would remember. And when he did, I would be ready. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. "They're already interviewing replacements, all under 35. I smiled, screenshotting the message. More evidence for my collection. Then I opened my email and began drafting messages to key board members, not to send yet, but to have ready. Each one would be perfectly crafted, revealing just enough to create panic without showing my full hand. As the sun set outside my window, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. Marcus thought he was setting me out to pasture, forcing me into an early retirement. Instead, he'd finally given me the freedom to act. I picked up the letter, reading it again, although I'd memorized every word. Marcus's handwriting was messy, betraying his emotional state when he'd written it. The details were damning, not just for him, but for half the executive team. "Too old," I muttered, putting the letter back in its hiding place. "We'll see about that." That night, I slept better than I had in months. The weight of pretending, of playing a loyal employee while gathering evidence, was finally lifted. Now I could focus on the next phase of my plan. The following morning, I woke up early and went for a walk in my neighborhood. The spring air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. As I walked, I thought about all the younger employees who'd been pushed out before me, the ones who didn't have the foresight or opportunity to gather evidence like I had. When I returned home, there were 3 missed calls from Marcus's secretary and an email about exit paperwork. I ignored them all. Let them wait. I had waited 15 years. They could wait a few days. Instead, I sat down at my desk and began writing a detailed timeline of every significant event I documented. Each entry was cross-referenced with the evidence I collected: emails, memos, photos, recordings of meetings. It was a tapestry of corruption, woven so tightly that pulling any single thread would cause the whole thing to unravel. Around noon, my doorbell rang. It was Jessica, holding a bag of takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. "I brought lunch," she said, her eyes red from crying. I couldn't stay there today, watching them celebrate like they'd done something good. I let her in, leading her to the kitchen. "Celebrating, are they?" She nodded, unpacking the food. "Marcus took the executive team to that fancy steakhouse downtown. They're calling it a restructuring celebration. It's disgusting." I made a note to add this to my timeline. Every detail mattered, no matter how small. "Victoria," Jessica said hesitantly, "what are you going to do?" I took a bite of pad thai, considering my answer carefully. For now, nothing. Sometimes the best action is patience. She looked confused but didn't press further. Smart girl. The less she knew, the better protected she would be when everything finally came to light. After Jessica left, I spent the afternoon organizing my digital files. Every piece of evidence was backed up in multiple locations: cloud storage, external hard drives, even a safe deposit box at my bank. Marcus might be tech-savvy, But I'd learned long ago never to keep all my eggs in one digital basket. That evening, I received my first LinkedIn message from a concerned colleague. Just heard what happened. This is outrageous. The whole department is in shock. More messages followed, each one expressing disbelief and support. I responded graciously to each one, maintaining my professional demeanor. Every message was screenshot and added to my files. The pattern of age discrimination was establishing itself without any effort on my part. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Victoria, it's Marcus. Just wanted to check that you received the severance paperwork. Please sign and return it by Friday, and I hope there are no hard feelings. You understand this is just business. I played the message twice, then saved it. His voice had a slight tremor, barely noticeable unless you knew what to listen for. He was nervous, though he probably didn't even realize why yet. Lying in bed, I thought about the years I'd spent building my case. The late nights copying documents, the accidental recordings of damning conversations, the careful cultivation of allies throughout the company. It had required patience, attention to detail, and the kind of wisdom that only comes with age. Too old, I whispered into the darkness, smiling. Your mistake, Marcus. Your biggest mistake. Sleep came easily again, filled with dreams of justice long delayed but not denied. In my experience, revenge was a dish best served not just cold, but meticulously prepared. The next few days passed in a blur of administrative tasks and planning. I ignored the severance paperwork, letting it sit unopened on my desk. Each day of delay would make Marcus more anxious, though he didn't yet know why. I spent my time organizing, preparing, waiting. The pieces were all in place, now it was just a matter of timing. Like a chess player setting up the perfect endgame, I knew that patience was my greatest weapon. And somewhere in the back of Marcus's mind, a clock was ticking. Soon he would remember that letter, and everything would change. But for now, I waited, letting him enjoy his false sense of victory. After all, I had nothing but time. And contrary to what Marcus believed, my age wasn't a weakness. It was my greatest strength. Because while youth might bring energy and ambition, age brings something far more valuable: the wisdom to know exactly when and how to strike. 3 months after my firing, the first crack in Marcus's confidence appeared. I was having coffee at my favorite cafe when Jessica called. Victoria, she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. Something's happening. Marcus just had a complete meltdown in the executive meeting. I stirred my latte calmly. Oh? What kind of meltdown? He was reviewing some old files for the upcoming audit, and suddenly he went pale. Like ghost white. He started asking about document retention policies and who had access to his old correspondence. Then he locked himself in his office for 2 hours. I smiled into my coffee. Right on schedule. The annual audit was approaching, and Marcus had finally remembered the letter. The drunken confession he thought he'd destroyed 5 years ago. How interesting, I said mildly. Keep me posted. Later that afternoon, the first call came. Marcus's number flashed on my phone screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. Victoria, it's Marcus. Listen, I've been thinking about how things ended, and I'd like to discuss it, perhaps over dinner. Call me back. I didn't. Instead, I went to my home office and pulled out the letter in question. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but Marcus's scrawled handwriting was still clear as day. The contents were even more damning than I remembered. Detailed descriptions of fraudulent accounting practices, insider trading, and systematic discrimination. 2 more calls came that evening. I ignored them both. The next morning, I drove to my bank and added another document to my safe deposit box. A detailed account of Marcus's recent behavior, witnessed and signed by Jessica. Every reaction, every panicked question about old documents meticulously recorded. When I returned home, there was an email from Marcus. Victoria, I hope you're doing well. I've been reflecting on our working relationship and feel we parted on unfortunate terms. Perhaps we could meet to discuss potential consulting opportunities. Your experience would be valuable to us. Best regards, Marcus. I screenshot the email and added it to my evidence file. The contrast between this tone and his dismissive attitude 3 months ago would make an interesting exhibit. That afternoon, I had lunch with Barbara, a board member I cultivated a friendship with over the years. She didn't know about my evidence, but she knew injustice when she saw it. The company's not the same without you, she said, sipping her wine. Marcus is acting strangely paranoid. Yesterday he asked for access to all archived correspondence from 5 years ago. I raised an eyebrow. 5 years ago specifically? How odd. Barbara leaned forward. There are whispers about the upcoming audit. Discrepancies in old reports. Marcus keeps saying everything's fine, but she shrugged meaningfully. I listened sympathetically, asking just the right questions to keep her talking. Every piece of information was another thread in my web. The next week brought more calls, more emails, each one increasingly desperate. Marcus went from offering consulting work to hinting at a potential position on the board. I maintained my silence. Finally, he showed up at my house. I was in my garden when his Mercedes pulled into my driveway. He stepped out, looking less polished than usual. His tie was slightly askew and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Victoria," he called out, trying to sound casual. "I've been trying to reach you." I set down my gardening tools and stood slowly, brushing dirt from my hands. "Yes, I saw your calls. I've been busy enjoying my retirement. You know, at my age, it's important to rest." He flinched at the subtle jab but pressed on. "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. The company misses you. I miss your institutional knowledge." Ah, there it was. Not my skills, not my leadership, but my knowledge. What I might know. "How thoughtful," I replied. "But I'm quite content here with my garden. Amazing how much wisdom you can gain working with the earth. Everything leaves traces, doesn't it? Like these flowers, even when you think they're gone, the roots remain, waiting for the right moment to bloom again." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to my house. "Victoria, I think we need to talk. About old times, old documents." I picked up my gardening shears, watching him take a small step back. "Old documents? You'll have to be more specific." I kept very thorough records during my 15 years at the company. It was one of the advantages of my experience. "There might have been a letter," he said quietly, "from around 5 years ago, after the Miller account." I tilted my head. "A letter? I handled so much correspondence over the years. Was this letter important?" Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the mild temperature. "If you have it, if you happen to keep it, we could make arrangements, very generous arrangements." "Are you trying to bribe me, Marcus?" I asked pleasantly, setting down the shears. "That doesn't seem wise, given the circumstances." His face hardened. "I don't know what game you're playing, but—" "I'm not playing any games," I interrupted. "I'm just an old woman tending her garden. But you know what they say about age bringing wisdom. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plants to water." I turned my back on him, a calculated risk that paid off. He stood there for a moment longer, then retreated to his car. As he drove away, I allowed myself a small smile. The seeds of doubt were firmly planted. That evening, Jessica called again. Marcus had it searching through old backup files all afternoon. He's freaking out. "Is he?" I said mildly. "How unfortunate. By the way, Jess, remember to forward me those emails about the new hiring policies. The ones specifically mentioning age preferences." "Already done," she replied. "Victoria, when are you going to do something?" I looked out my window at the garden where I confronted Marcus. Everything has its season, Jessica, even justice. The next day, I received a formal letter from Marcus's personal attorney, offering to resolve any outstanding issues for a substantial sum. I filed it with my other evidence without responding. 3 days later, Marcus called again. This time, I answered. "Hello, Marcus." "Victoria," he said, his voice strained. "Please, that letter. I know you have it. Name your price." I let the silence stretch for a moment. It's interesting, isn't it? How something as simple as a letter can suddenly become so valuable, almost as valuable as 15 years of experience. "What do you want?" he demanded. "Want? I'm exactly where I want to be, Marcus. Enjoying my retirement, tending my garden, organizing my files. I have so many files, you know. Letters, emails, recordings. It's amazing what accumulates over 15 years. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Recordings?" "Oh yes," I said cheerfully. "I may be old, but I learned to adapt to new technology, another advantage of experience." "Why are you doing this?" "I'm not doing anything, Marcus. I'm simply being thorough. Methodical. Careful. All those qualities you dismiss as being too What was the word? Ah, yes, dynamic. The line went quiet for so long, I thought you'd hung up. Finally, he spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. How many other letters are there? I smiled into the phone. Which ones are you worried about? After he hung up, I went to my office and began preparing the next phase of my plan. Marcus's panic was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not after what he'd done to me and so many others. I opened my laptop and began drafting emails to each board member, carefully crafted messages that would hint at what I knew without revealing everything. Like dropping pebbles in a pond, each one would create ripples, spreading doubt and uncertainty through the company's leadership. The game was entering its final phase, and I had all the pieces in place. Marcus thought he forced me into retirement, but he'd actually given me exactly what I needed: time, freedom, and motivation. I picked up the original letter, reading it one more time. Soon, very soon, it would be time to show my full hand. But not yet. Like my garden, this revenge needed time to fully bloom. For now, I would let Marcus stew in his own fear, wondering just how many letters I had, just how many recordings existed. Let him lose sleep over what might be revealed in the upcoming audit. After all, I had nothing but time, and I intended to use every minute of it. The annual shareholders meeting was scheduled for a bright Thursday morning in September, exactly 1 year after my firing. I'd chosen this day carefully. Timing, as always, was everything. The night before, I couldn't sleep, not from nervousness, but from anticipation. I sat in my garden, watching the stars and thinking about how far I'd come. My phone buzzed constantly with desperate messages from Marcus. Please, we can work this out. Name your price. Think about what you're doing. I let each one go unanswered. The time for negotiations had passed long ago. That morning, I dressed with particular care. A crisp charcoal suit, pearl earrings, and my mother's vintage Cartier watch. As I applied my lipstick, I thought about all the people Marcus had pushed out before me. The women over 40, the men nearing retirement age, all discarded like outdated equipment. Jessica met me in the parking lot of the corporate headquarters, clutching a thick manila envelope. Everything's ready, she whispered. The board members all got your email this morning. They're in a panic. I nodded, taking the envelope. And Marcus. Locked in his office is at 6 a.m. He's called his lawyers 3 times already. The email I'd sent to the board was simple but effective. A meeting request with a single attachment, a scanned copy of one of Marcus's lesser indiscretions. Not the big letter, just enough to prove I had evidence of wrongdoing. The subject line read, "Additional documents for today's meeting." The lobby was chaos when I walked in. Board members huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Executives hurried back and forth, their faces tight with stress. Several people stopped and stared as I passed, but no one tried to stop me. Barbara intercepted me by the elevators. "Victoria," she hissed, "what's in those documents you mentioned?" I smiled warmly. "Let's discuss it in the meeting, shall we?" The shareholders' meeting was held in the grand conference room on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city, though today no one was admiring the scenery. The room was packed, tension thick in the air. Marcus sat at the head of the table, trying to maintain his composure, but I could see the slight tremor in his hands as he shuffled papers. When I walked in, his face went pale. "Victoria," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "This is a private meeting." I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Actually, as a shareholder, I have every right to be here. I may have been fired, but I never sold my shares in the company." Before he could respond, I began distributing copies of a thick document to everyone present. "I've prepared some materials for review," I said pleasantly. "I believe you'll find them quite illuminating." The room fell silent as people began reading. I watched their faces: shock, disbelief, anger. The document detailed 15 years of systematic age discrimination, financial misconduct, and corporate fraud. Each claim was supported by emails, memos, recordings, and photographs. And at the center of it all was Marcus's infamous letter, its contents even more damning in the harsh light of day. This is lies," Marcus sputtered, but his protest sounded weak even to his own ears. "Is it?" I asked, my voice carrying across the silent room. "Every document is authentic, every recording verified." I believe the SEC would be particularly interested in the section about the Miller account, and the Department of Labor might have questions about your hiring practices. One of the major shareholders, a stern woman named Eleanor, looked up from the papers. Marcus, is this true? Did you really fire 38 employees over the age of 50 in the past year alone? It was restructuring, he stammered. Cost-cutting measures. And replace them all with employees under 35? I added helpfully, at higher salaries. The board chairman cleared his throat. Marcus, I think you need to step out while we discuss this. You can't be serious, Marcus protested. She's just a disgruntled ex-employee. I stood up slowly, commanding the room's attention. No, Marcus, I'm someone who watched you systematically destroy careers and lives because you thought age made us worthless. I'm someone who had the wisdom and patience to gather evidence while you got sloppy and arrogant. And now I'm someone who's going to watch you face the consequences. The next 2 hours were a blur of heated discussions, legal consultations, and hastily called votes. By the end, Marcus was suspended pending investigation, and the board had voted to appoint an interim CEO, Barbara. As security escorted Marcus out, he tried one last time. Victoria, please. We can still work something out. I walked up to him, close enough to see the defeat in his eyes. You know what they say about wisdom coming with age? It's true. I learned to wait, to watch, to document everything. And now you get to learn what it feels like to be pushed out of the company you helped build. The aftermath was exactly as I planned. The SEC launched a full investigation. The Department of Labor opened an inquiry into the company's hiring practices. Marcus faced criminal charges for financial fraud. 1 month later, I sat in my garden enjoying the autumn sunshine. My phone rang. Barbara. The board's reviewed your proposal, she said. They want you to head the new Ethics and Compliance Department. Full autonomy, direct board reporting, and complete authority to implement age-inclusive hiring policies. I smiled, watching a butterfly land on one of my roses. Tell them I accept. Victoria, Barbara added, I have to ask. Why did you wait so long? You could have exposed Marcus years ago. Sometimes, I said, thinking of all the lives Marcus had impacted, all the careers he derailed, justice needs time to mature. Like a garden, you can't rush it. You have to nurture it, tend it, and wait for the right moment to harvest. After hanging up, I walked through my garden, touching the flowers I planted the day after my firing. They had grown strong and beautiful, just like my revenge. Marcus had thought age was a weakness, but he'd learned the hard way that with age comes patience, wisdom, and the ability to play the long game. The next morning, as I walked into the office, my new office, I passed the security desk where Tommy still worked. He grinned and gave me a thumbs up. Jessica was waiting by my door, beaming. Welcome back, boss. I smiled, touching the nameplate on my door. It's good to be back. Now, let's make some changes around here. My first act as Ethics and Compliance Director was to implement a comprehensive age discrimination training program. My second was to review all terminations from the past 5 years, offering reinstatement to those who had been unfairly pushed out. Marcus's letter hung framed on my wall, a reminder that patience and wisdom will always triumph over arrogance and discrimination. Below it, I placed a small plaque with a quote I'd chosen carefully. Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. As I settled into my new role, I thought about all the other Victorias out there, experienced professionals being pushed aside because of their age. My story would give them hope, show them that sometimes the best revenge isn't swift or dramatic, but patient and methodical. The company flourished under the new leadership. Our inclusive hiring practices brought in a diverse range of talent, combining the energy of youth with the wisdom of experience. We became a model for other corporations, proving that success doesn't have an age limit. 1 year to the day after the shareholders' meeting, I received a letter from Marcus. He was awaiting trial, his reputation in tatters, his career destroyed. The letter was an apology, probably advised by his lawyers, but I appreciated the irony. Another letter, another turning point. I filed it away with all my other evidence, a final piece in the story of how patience and wisdom had triumphed over discrimination and arrogance. Then I went back to work because there was still so much to do. After all, I wasn't too old, I was just getting started.